morning. Permanent bear-resistant containers and enclosure systems are permitted with prior approval by the town manager and code administrator, and they are subject to location and construction standards. Detailed requirements ensure durability, anchoring, effective bear resistance, with a process for conditional approval and correction if problems occur. We've also added some prohibited disposal methods. So the ordinance will continue to prohibit burning or burying solid waste, and it just reaffirms the existing environmental and safety standards that were already in there. It just clarifies some of the language around burying and burning. Waste accumulation and collection. All waste must be kept secured in approved bear-resistant containers until pickup. The town will provide weekly collection year-round and twice weekly during summer months. If waste is scattered due to noncompliance, the town may clean up the debris and cite the property owner, who may be required to purchase another approved bear-resistant container if one is not sufficient. Yard waste and leaf collections, we just do some definitions here. Yard waste will be limited to 3 cubic yards per pickup. We've added some brush size restrictions, 6 feet long, 6 inches in diameter. Excess yard waste may be collected for a fee. Leaves must be bagged in biodegradable paper bags. Limit 10 bags or 2 cubic yards per collection. White goods and bulk items. Collection for large household items and appliances will continue twice per year free of charge, with additional pickups available by request and subject to a fee. Weekly recycling. Recyclables must be placed unbagged at the curb, separated from solid waste. Construction sites. This will clarify that it is the holder of the building permit. So whoever is taking the building permit out must maintain construction sites free of refuse, hazards, and unsightly conditions throughout the project. Do you have a question?
Yeah, we'll wait.
Okay. Property owners will be responsible for compliance, including for renters, guests, or vacation rental occupants, such as Airbnb or VRBO. Owners are liable for violations and penalties, even if they are caused by others occupying the property. Convenience center use. The town may operate one or more convenience centers for residents only. Centers must be used during posted hours for bagged residential waste only. Dumping outside receptacles or leaving debris is prohibited. Enforcement and penalties. So this is another section that we've tried to really clarify and strengthen a little bit. Enforcement authority is assigned to the town manager or designee. A new graduated penalty system applies. $100 for a first offense, $200 for a second, $400 for a third or subsequent offense. Repeated or reckless violations may also result in suspension of services and cleanup cost recovery. And then it just gets into some definitions. So if you have any questions, I can answer those now.
Under number 3, twice weekly during the summer, that's new. Is that going to be true?
We've talked about it. We think that because of the challenges we've had in the summer over the last several years, it's probably best to do it twice during the summer. It just helps with keeping the bears, especially, out of the trash.
I'd like to applaud staff for that recommendation. I do think that that's an important addition, particularly to I just think it's a great recommendation by staff. One question I had on recycling, it says recyclables must be placed unbagged at the curb, separated from solid waste, and also the ordinance itself is changed. Is unclear to me. You're not suggesting we just pile up our paper cups and plastic plates at the curb? How can they?
Yes.
How can they be placed in? I don't get it. It seems to me they have to be bagged in at some point, because otherwise you're just going to have bagged solid waste and unbagged And
Right,
you say
and
place
I-
at the curb, not in the container, it should, I don't get it. It's.
Sure.
Can I add to that, too? Not only that question about the bag versus unbagged recyclables at the curbside, but there is a lack of reference to recyclables in 2 or 3 spots here when solid waste is mentioned. Are we doing away with recyclables?
No, we still plan to have recycling and offer that service. I believe, Barry, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, we added having it unbagged because of the, yes, okay.
Just break down your boxes.
Yeah, so that part needs to be clarified. And keeping it separate from solid waste, I think we were trying to aim for separate containers for recycling versus trash.
Solid waste, because now we're combining the cardboard and the recycling. We're just separating from their solid waste.
Does that make sense? So if the hope is, and our hope is eventually to be able to use a truck with maybe an arm to help pick some of the trash cans up so that Drew or whoever's doing the trash doesn't have to handle it 2 or 3 times. Our goal is to hopefully have whoever's working sanitation handle the trash less. It would help if they were separated from trash to recycling, but that does need to be clarified in the ordinance, so I'm just going to make a note of that.
That just needs work both places.
I'm guessing when you have a bunch of boxes in a blue bag, it just takes up the amount of space that the truck can use. So that was the main concern, is that the boxes need to be broken down?
Yes, sir. And what you have is when you put the boxes in with your loose recycle, you've got less of bags, we're running into a lot of that.
Yep.
And you've got time
Picking it up?
cleaning up
Yep.
from,
So maybe put something in there about breaking the boxes down, yeah.
Not recyclables as a whole, but we're really talking about cardboard boxes.
My kids can come by your house and break them down for $1 a box if you need it.
I've got a construction box as my trash container, so am I going to have to buy another?
No, we want to avoid having people buy new containers if they already have a system that's working. So I believe what we have in here, and this is my, like 400th version of this, but I believe what we have in here right now is that you can purchase a manufacturer-approved bear-resistant container, or you can have the system that you are using approved by the town manager or the designee. In this case, it will be Barry will run up, make sure that it actually is bear-resistant. They have a very good sense of what works and what doesn't. And so folks who are being responsible, who are already using a system that works, we don't want to punish them by making them purchase something special.
That's on page 68, item 3, that describes the existing BRCs, if you will. Your containers, my container.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Savannah, I'd like to also see us spell out the specific months of summer. A lot of people interpret summer different than we do, and I think you're talking about June, July, and August for twice pickup.
Yes, we can certainly narrow that down and
Is that
put
right,
some
Barry?
parameters
June,
on
July,
it.
and August? Okay.
Do we need to go all the way through August, or could we just do it through the?
August 31st would be a good time. That seems to be a good changeover right there.
Even though the MRA conference season only goes through the first week of August?
We've noticed, the trash staying heavy through August, so I think it would be helpful, yes.
When you were reading on number 3, at the end, you said that you might have to buy another container if one is not sufficient. That wasn't in my printout. Is that something that's on your printout, or?
No, so what we have is we are requiring, and I need to find the right page. We would require a certain number of containers based on occupancy, I believe. Hold on one second.
know that's really an issue with large houses that rent to conference, that there's not enough places
Yes.
to put their trash.
So this is new language. It says each household and/or property must possess and maintain an adequate number of bear-resistant containers to contain all solid waste generated by the household and/or property. If a household or property exceeds the capacity of its bear-resistant containers and places additional solid waste outside of its bear-resistant containers for pickup, then the household or property owner does not have adequate bear-resistant containers.
Savannah, you guys did a really good job on this. There are a lot of little nitpicky things. Do you want to go through that now, or do you want me to sit down with you and give you what I've got? For example, I think we need to have a definition under the definitions let's see. We need to define yard waste.
If you want to just go through some of your notes, I think that might be helpful. It might generate some additional thoughts.
Let's see. We need to change town administrator to town manager. That shows up on the bottom of page 67 of the ordinance in item 1. And item 2 appears to be redundant to item 2 seems to be redundant to item 1. It also talks about the town administrator, but it's also redundant in terms of what it's saying. It may just not have gotten deleted. Let's see.
I think they're differentiating there, Tom, between, and it's confusing, but we've got some new terms that are used, but the first is for the bear-resistant containers, which is the actual can itself, versus permanent bear-resistant systems, which is sort of a fenced enclosure, much like you've got, which is not a bear-proof container, but a bear-proof containment system. But there are two different things, and they've got sort of two different.
But both items, 1 and 2, lead off with the word permanent BRCs.
Yeah, but a BRC and a BRC system are two different things.
Yes, and I think that we're referring to the BRCs, the bear-resistant containers, as permanent because ideally they will be affixed to the ground in some way.
Then that ought to be clarified.
So, I mean, I have a bear-resistant trash can that works very well that I roll out. Are we saying that those we're going to exclude those?
Barry, what do you think about excluding?
The rollout cans that are actually, the bear resistant, they're working fine.
Oh, it worked, yeah.
So if you stick to your, rolling them out the morning of, and then taking them back in, when pickup's over, I don't see why we couldn't leave that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had bears try to get into it probably 20 times.
Sure.
And I hear it, and because it's right outside my bedroom, and I look, and it's like, oh, that's cool. There's some bears in my yard, and I watch them, and they try it for like 5 seconds, and then they walk away.
That's good. So we can definitely leave room for further rollouts as well. I think a lot of people in town do seem to lean more towards the systems than containers, but it's good to know that those rollouts are working.
Well, I would rather have the system. It's just, I just haven't done it,
I think we need to, just because I've worked with this ordinance, it's hard you got to sort of walk out there and see what there's sort of 3 things going on. If the way this ordinance is going now, which is to exclude normal cans, one is a bear-proof rollout. That's a BRC. The other is a permanent BRC. That would be, I would think, just talking out loud, I could be wrong here, is what I've got, which is a metal container that is anchored to a concrete slab, and then two garbage cans are placed inside it, and it's locked. And then there's and then that itself is bear-proof. And then there's a third thing, which are these, I guess, oftentimes wooden enclosures, which are, I think, Tom, you've got one, right? A wooden enclosure, which I assume is a bear-proof system.
But, you know, I don't see any difference between that and the permanent container like you've got. I mean, they're both the same thing. And are we confusing things by trying to define by type of material used?
Well, maybe, but they're sometimes functionally different in the sense that the kind I have, the big metal basket, some people don't put containers inside of that. They just put the bags in it. Whereas in the containers like you have, people actually put regular garbage cans in there, and then the bags inside the garbage cans. I don't know. If we can simplify the ordinance, that's fine, but there are sort of three things going on.
Well, it does seem like we have a provision in there. Like if you have a system that you've built yourself and it's not effective, right? That provision's in there. It's like, well, then if it's not effective, then you're required to upgrade your system.
Yes, that's right.
Let's see. As I mentioned, yard waste should be defined. And I may have said this. I suggest we move the definitions up front.
Okay.
On the section, starts on page 69, the town will not collect more than 2 cubic yards of leaves or 10 55-gallon bags. I'd like to know what the rationale is for that limit. It looks like our friend Brandon suggested a limit, and I'm just wondering what that rationale was, because I have a neighbor who has a yard that takes more than 10, and she stacks them up, and she does a very good job of making sure that her yard is clean and those bags are neatly stacked by the roadside. And if we are saying that they can only do 10, is she going to have to do half her yard one week and half her yard the next week?
Maybe they'll take half.
So we will take more than the 10 bags, but there would be a fee associated with that. And the rationale was to help save some time on the guys who were doing the collecting. But, you know, this is a conversation. If you want to do more than 10, it's your ordinance. You can do more than 10.
I'd like to say something about that. If I were to bag the leaves in my yard, I think it would probably be 100 or more bags. And so I don't think that would be reasonable for me to expect the town to come pick all of those up. So I don't know where the number is, but I do think 100's probably too much. What I do is I pay a guy. I think he charges me $150, and he comes and sucks them up into a vacuum. Now it's $150, but when I think about the amount of time it would take for me to put all of those leaves in those bags, just the putting it, my time, I'm like, I'll pay the guy to come suck them up. And then that's not even talking about the time or the money that it would cost to pay the town to do it, whether or not that's a fee that I incur or whether, you know, essentially the rest of the town would be subsidizing the picking up of, you know, Grant's leaves. And so I don't know, maybe 10's not enough, but 100's probably too much for sure. But if you guys want to do that, it'll save me $150. So
you can quit your practice and become a professional.
I could be. I told my nephew, I was like, I've got the job for you. You need to go buy this machine and be sucking these leaves up. So,
you know, I just think that we're putting a lot of things on our residents. We don't have a vacuum system. It's just not financially practical. So we're asking everybody to put them in leaf bags. And leaf bags themselves cost 50 cents a piece. So we're putting a burden on them to begin with, and to put a limit on them and let them, in Kat's case, Kat Atchison's case, do half of her yard one week and then half the next week, I just think is unreasonable.
Well, it's up to you all. If you,
Peter's got a comment.
oh, yes.
Can I add a little bit to this for digestion? The multiple bags are just fine, but remember, we limited staff. We have a day, Drew's doing 2 days a week, sometimes on brush and leaves. So if we stop at a stop that's got 50 bags or 100 bags, that's gonna take up more time during that day, where he's not gonna be able to make that lap around town to get everything. So sometimes, and we've seen people call, my bags are set for 2 weeks. We're still gonna have that delay in pickup. And I think that might be why we discussed maybe a limit on bags, was so we could make the complete lap around town. And as far as with the bags, with the system we're doing now, as far as pickup, we don't have to have now the biodegradable bags. We can pick them up in plastic bags because they go straight from the truck into a dumpster. The dumpster goes straight to the landfill now because we don't have a disposable site now. So that kind of opens that up as y'all are discussing all this a little bit, but we just got to remember, we're trying to provide a service weekly all around town. So I think a number might be a little important there.
What if we designed a pickup system that picked up odd-numbered homes one week and even-numbered homes the next week? That would give everybody a heads up. It would cut your staff's work down, but would still allow somebody like Kat to get her yard done.
And I think as we move forward, if we've got a few more conversations like Savannah's talking about, I'd like to bring Drew into this too, because he's actually, the boots in the dirt. Yeah. He probably has a few ideas there, or can give you a better idea of what he's up against on, a daily deal there. And if we're looking at twice a week in the summertime, that's going to, if people are really coming in for summertime cleanup and everything, that might put us a little further behind on the leaf and brush pickup. So there's a few factors that we probably should discuss with him also.
Sounds good. And the next section, section 6, we probably should define white goods. White goods.
Okay.
And some of these definitions may be defined in another place in the ordinance. The definitions in the draft are included at the bottom, but they're intended to go into the definition section of the ordinance where other definitions for the sanitation ordinance are.
That's right,
I'm
yes.
not sure if white goods is. I can check.
I'm almost positive that both white goods and yard waste are defined
I think they are.
in the ordinance, just not in this section.
Okay. Section 7 is the one that that Mason was referring to, that suggests that we take our beer cans and soda cans and dump them loose on the side of the road. In the next one, under Section 8, new construction and remodeling, when we were thinking of building over at Laurel Ridge, and we owned property over there, they had a huge problem because of all the new houses that were going on with contractors throwing food into the dumpsters that were at each house site. And the bears were getting into everything. And they levied a really hefty fine on contractors if that happened. So it's not unusual for construction crews to toss old lunch.
Yeah, let me second what Tom's saying. That's why I raised this. This is a contractor issue, and most of the time, many of the times, our residents that are having construction done aren't even here. They couldn't
Right.
police it if they wanted to. Contractor, whether the permit's issued to him or not, should be responsible, and not only just for the dumpster, but any food on site, and because the subcontractors, which are really the people that do the dumping, if they're not policed, nothing will happen, and the contractor's somebody's got to be responsible for policing it, and the contractor's the one, and if he's not penalized for it, he ain't going to do it.
Yeah, and I will say that the vast majority of the time, the permit is being pulled by the contractor for large projects. Small projects are different, but extensive remodeling and new construction, the permits are typically pulled by the contractor. But we can talk about maybe specifically around construction dumpsters and food waste, making that the contractor's responsibility. Yeah.
Okay.
Can we put that in the, somewhere with the paperwork they get after getting a permit?
Good idea.
Yeah, I think that may have already be in the paperwork. I'm not positive. I think
So
it sure should be if it's not.
Just in addition then to Section 8 about food waste.
Yes, while we're still on that subject, yesterday on Virginia Road, there's a dumpster, and when I went by, there was a bear that had retrieved a bag and was daring me to try to run him away. But also, when I had a dumpster in my yard, the crows would come and pull out food and drop it everywhere.
Yes, unsecured dumpsters, as you all know, are a big problem, especially if they have food inside.
And they're not covered, and that's the big
Well,
issue.
while we're talking about dumpsters, is there anything that addresses the college and MRA's responsibility for keeping their dumpsters locked? And I don't think there is. I don't remember seeing anything because, I showed you a picture this year of one in the college up there near the gymnasium that the bear had gotten in because somebody had not locked it back.
Well, it's a little bit tricky because we don't pick up their trash. So I guess we could add a section in here about institutional dumpsters and trash items. We have had conversations with both the college and the MRA about making sure those dumpsters stay secured and locked, but it's an ongoing issue. Yeah.
But it does contribute to the problem that even though it's not our trash pickup and they contract for that, it does contribute to the bear problem.
Yeah, you're conditioning the bears.
Mm-hmm.
In Section 10, convenience center, the town may provide a convenience center and/or centers, and then later on, a parenthesis S is added to convenience center. Since we don't have more than one, I'm just thinking that adds to confusion. If we could, unless there was a plan on adding a second one.
No, I don't think there's any immediate plans to add any additional convenience centers, so we can take that out.
I have a comment on the convenience center paragraph. It relates, I guess, to the enforcement paragraph next, but I think that we should have a special penalty and violation for non-residents of Montreat utilizing the convenience center. And I think it ought to be stiff. I think it ought to be $1,000 so we can put a sign up. And cameras are here, $1,000 if we catch you. And that's going to help. And I think it ought to be, if we can, and North Carolina law is confusing to me because I don't have time to really read enough of it to understand they've been changing the rules, but it ought to be It ought to be criminal. It ought to be a second or third degree misdemeanor for somebody to will, and then you know it's willful. They know it's not their place, and they're dumping it, and they're dumping their trash and their expense on the town of Montreat and the citizens of this county, and we ought to stick them, and stick them good if we catch them.
Would it
Go
fall
get 'em,
under
Mason.
trespassing?
What?
Would it fall under
Well,
trespassing?
it would fall under, there would be a trespass violation under the state criminal code if they violate, the fence or stuff like that, so. And, because if they go under the general, if we stick them under the general enforcement, they get a warning. That's all they get if we catch them. They get, for the first offense, they get a warning. So,
I jotted that down as well.
yeah.
How do you enforce it? How do you collect?
Angie.
Tax collector.
Well, we've got cameras now, and if we're able to get their license plate, we've got a pretty good case.
Rachel, you're shaking your head no.
I just don't think Angie has enough time.
She doesn't.
Well, Justin, do you have thoughts?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first question I would have, Commissioner, would be what by definition is a resident? Other than a tax-paying citizen, because you have a ton of visitors in your town with Airbnbs, et cetera. So how are you going to identify who is welcome to use the convenience center versus not?
that's part of drafting the ordinance, but the term resident or not would be somebody who is in fact residing in town or is either on a permanent basis or temporarily residing by being at a conference here.
Yeah, I think that would be our biggest obstacle. I agree with you, and it is definitely a problem. We've seen it be a problem. But for us, having those, identification mechanisms, which we've discussed a little bit already, whether it's even securing that a little bit better with key cards or key fobs that can be left, the citizens, the homeowners can have up to 2 free of charge. And then if they lose them or they're a temporary resident takes it with them, they're the ones responsible for obtaining a key fob again and incurring that cost. And that way you can secure that at all times, maybe even change the hours to some degree. And you're really going to prevent it, but then we would have a lot more leverage to stand on should somebody try to sneak in without the key fob, things of that nature.
Yeah. But just being able to put a sign up there, $1,000 fine if you're again, we got a non-resident, however you want to, we make a defined term, is going to be just a lot of prevention. People will just turn around and say,
A little shock value.
Maybe I don't want to do this.
And the enforcement would probably be for people who are just routinely doing it over and over and over
Yeah, and we
again.
do
It's like
have
the
a
same
handful of
people. I'm
those
sure there's people you
folks, yeah.
recognize. You're like, they're using it. They don't live here.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if there was an article in the local newspaper letting Black Mountain people know or non-residents know.
$10,000
fine.
No pressure, Gary.
That it was discussed.
I think too many people say, oh, they've got a convenience center? Okay, I'll sneak up there.
But that is convenient.
It's convenient, right?
Well, I asked Angie one time about leveling fines against people in Montreat who are not securing their garbage, and you said that it's hard to make them pay. You send them a bill, but they don't pay it. So how are we going to enforce outside people if we can't even collect from our own?
Well, part of the issue with enforcement was that we didn't have good enforcement spelled out in our ordinance. So we're taking care of that piece, I think, with some of these revisions. But really, the issue we see from Montreaters is, the dumpsters are full and they just leave it on the stairs. That's really the biggest issue we see out of folks who live in town.
Back on section 10 on page 70, that section just speaks of the disposal of solid waste, but not recyclables. So maybe we can add recyclables in broken down cardboard boxes. Likewise, in the convenience, section 10 of the convenience center. And then item 3, same thing. only bagged residential solid waste. We should add recyclables there as well. The Section 110 and enforcement, does that, I've assumed that enforcement refers to everything, including bringing in trash containers within 1 day?
Yes, so this enforcement section applies to the entire ordinance.
Okay. I think we're being lenient in the second offense and third offense. I would suggest we bump that up from 200 to 250. And the third offense from 400 to 500.
Let me bring up, I agree with Tom, and let me bring up a second issue, just so, because a lot of people at the table may not understand the way this is drafted. We've only got penalties, or even if the violation is willful, wanton, or reckless, okay? That's a criminal standard, even though it's specified the penalty is a civil penalty. And what it doesn't cover if somebody is negligent. And I have a hard time with that. Negligent means when you're negligent, you don't do what the reasonable man should do in a given circumstance. And I think here in Montreat, we understand how serious the bear issue is. And if you don't, everybody here should know, every reasonable person should know, every reasonable person should know the way you put your trash out and keep it is important and what he or she should do. And I think if they don't do it, they deserve to get a fine, particularly when we're giving them a first choice. And again, I'm not trying to be hard, but I am trying to make people concerned. And if I think negligence should be the standard. We can certainly say that, maybe the second offense wouldn't occur if they didn't have another problem for another year or two. I can build some more leniency into it, although I think I just think it should be a negligence standard, and I think that's what's appropriate, and I think we owe that to the citizens because, we're talking about the bears, but we have this isn't just a garbage issue. It's a public safety issue, and I think every one of us knows that, probably more than most people in town, and I just think it ought to be a negligence standard for the penalty to kick in.
And kind of negligence is when a citizen texts me or calls me and says, well, the bear went in my garage and got my garbage can. Negligence to me is,
Leaving the garage.
did you shut the garage door? And the answer was no. That's negligent.
Yeah.
If they got garbage in there, they ought to be fined.
Yeah,
How do you prove that somebody willfully, wantonly, or recklessly failed to lock their garbage can?
Yeah.
The proof, going into court for that, if you talk about being hard to enforce, these penalties are not. And they're a civil penalty. What we're not doing is assessing a criminal penalty. So this is a civil penalty, and we don't need to have a criminal standard of guilt.
I think that's probably reasonable, Mason, to add negligence as the standard. And then I also like your idea of saying, maybe if within a calendar year you don't have another issue, then we go back to first.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Reset the clock.
Yeah.
That's reasonable.
I don't think that the people that are spending the time to come up here and dump their garbage are the people that can afford large fines. I think we should levy a fine that hurts but is possible to pay. I mean, if you charge somebody $500, there's no way they're going to pay it, then what happens?
What does happen?
Well, so for the heightened standard issue, I think Mason's points are all very good ones. I do think that we made a conscious decision not to include negligence. And the only thing I want to point out, and I think that Mason said it better than I'm going to, but this will capture people who make a good faith mistake, people who just got something wrong. If, you know, that negligence is oftentimes an honest mistake, and there won't be an exception for that under the ordinance if we put negligence in there. We could think about a heightened standard of negligence, some sort of gross negligence, but then as Mason, he shakes his head right there because he knows how difficult it is to show gross negligence in a court of law. So I think that it does make sense to consider having that negligence standard as the standard. I would just expect a couple phone calls of people who got a letter who said, look, this was an honest mistake. This was an honest mistake.
And it can be, but you can tell people. I know it doesn't seem fair, but, the law isn't always fair, and we're going to have to penalize you if we're going to have to penalize the other people because they don't make an honest mistake, but negligence is negligence. We just got to hold you to a standard.
And I'm going to go back to the dumpsters again from the college and MRA. It's inside our corporate limits, and we're trying to prevent the feeding of bears through garbage. They have resident counselors who live in these dorms. They have security people, and if they can't lock their dumpsters, they ought to be fined too.
Yeah, I have a hard time, holding. I've got someone in my mind who is a widow who is having to pay a large property tax bill, and a fine would be that would be a big deal for her. So I have a hard time holding her accountable, but then not holding these institutions accountable. I think that's reasonable.
Still back on section 110, on page 71 of the ordinance. There's some language in there that I think is a little weak and that we could strengthen. In the last sentence of item 1, first offense, in either such case, the violator may be ordered to reimburse. Likewise, in second offense, a $200 civil penalty may be issued. And then in the next sentence of number 2, in either case, the violator should be ordered. That ought to be, will be ordered or may be ordered to reimburse the town. Same thing in the third offense. May be issued and should be. We just need to strengthen that language, I think.
I've got a question, Brandon, and this is technical, but would the town be entitled to receipt of these penalties, or do we need to opt out in this, opt out of it going to the school board?
I would need to look into that. I believe that as it's classified as a civil penalty, it should go to the town.
Just if we need to add some language there, there's some stuff in the code's canon I read about maybe having to have some opt-out language.
Criminal penalties go to the schools.
Yeah.
And that's pretty clear, but I think that's a good point. I can look into it further.
We just need to something to check.
Last issue I have is just a question. I think we're all in agreement, and we know that 68% of residents said that they felt bear-resistant containers ought to be required. That was in last year's survey. There are some folks who may not be able to afford that because the bear container that he's got is what, $450?
I think it's almost $500.
Yeah, and that there are cheaper ones, but they really aren't good. I love to watch the bears play ping pong with your bear container. They just bat it back and forth, but it never opens. But some folks can't afford that. I know that the town of Highland you sent me their ordinance on bird feeders and bear-resistant trash containers. They have a provision where they got a good deal on them and sell those containers to the residents, but on a time base, pay over time. Is that something that we could consider?
We could look into it. It would, if we were to buy the containers, we would probably need to hold on, obviously purchasing them until next budget year. It would need to be, a budgeted expense. Certainly, it's going to be, it would be costly. So we can look into it. We can get some numbers and see what you think. But I also think, just something to think about, because we are offering the opportunity to allow people to modify containers they already have, to use containers that they already have. There's not necessarily, I don't think there's going to be a huge burden on folks that they are going to feel like they have to immediately go out and buy a $500 trash can. But we can gather some numbers and see what it would look like for us to do something similar to Highlands.
Savannah, I know that when we pave roads that are unpaved in a community or a street that people have asked us to pave the road, we go ahead and pave the road and we charge the residents, whoever the property owners are, whatever, over a 10-year period, X amount of dollars to pay the town back. Is there any way we can include a sanitation fee for the price of a dumpster on the water bills or the sanitation thing in order to let them pay for that on a sort of a time-based plan? That's just a thought.
I think we could look at something like that. If we were able to get a deal on the containers and someone was interested in purchasing them from the town at a cheaper price, we might be able to look at like billing it over a full year on their water bill or something like that. So let me get some numbers together of what the upfront cost to the town would be, and then we can discuss,
I'm just
whether we
thinking
would
about
want to allow people to
Grant's
purchase.
widow, who may not be able to come off the hip with a whole bunch of money, but maybe periodic payments over a year
Yeah.
might work better.
Okay.
And the other thing we could also do is once you get that information, is we could reach out to the residents and say, are you interested in this option? And then we'd at least have some idea of what our financial exposure would be, our initial financial exposure would be.
Let me ask Barry if storage would be a problem. If you bought a bunch of bear-proof containers, where are you going to put them until people buy them?
We'll line them up in here.
Yeah, that was my first thought as well.
We'll figure something out.
Yeah.
It just, may just depend on, buying, 20 at a time or something like that. Maybe, we could, of course, do like some municipalities and buy 100 at a time. But, we just have to, we'll figure it out.
Or it would need to be kind of an immediate turnaround. Mm-hmm. We buy them and then we do a one-day event where they're being handed out, that week or something. It would need to be. We could not store them indefinitely, is what I'm trying to say. At least not a large number.
But we could take orders too.
Yeah, we could do like a once a year thing, put something out there, the town's getting ready to purchase cans and take a toll or a poll on how many people would need them, and then do a purchase, something like that will eliminate some of the storage issue.
I think the rental units would be the least likely to need these because they're not here to put it out and collect it.
Probably, yeah.
They'll need the permanent system.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions about the ordinance right now or comments?
Yeah, I have, I'm sorry. Justin, go ahead.
I just had a question. Grant, with your situation there, Tom, with your stronger requests for enforcement language, et cetera, Brandon, should there be an appeal process in this for Grant's individual situation. You went away from negligence or gross negligence, et cetera. So if somebody does want to contest, like, hey, this was my neighbor's trash that got brought over, it's on my property, I'm the one that got the fine because of this, like, is there a process for that, or how are you going to combat that?
There's an appeal process. This would be an administrative decision, and there's an appeal process in the ordinance and in North Carolina law to appeal that decision. Those appeals go to the Board of Adjustment.
Brandon, you may want to look, we did put together an actual policy for assessment of civil penalties that I do believe has an appeal process built into it. I think Angie has that, or Savannah has that. It's something we did a couple of years ago, but you need to take a look at it. It probably needs some improvement. So.
That's good to know. If that policy applies, then you would follow the standards set out in that civil penalty policy.
Angie, I know that you've been frustrated with the fact that you send fines out and nobody pays them. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, and regarding what those fines are for and what kind of a response you get from the person that has received that fine?
Angie, could I jump in here real quick? I believe that you all are taking steps to sign on to the North Carolina Debt Set-Off Program. That may address a lot of the concerns that the board has about the collection of fees. What that allows the town to do is to send out their fees. If there's no response, no payment, the town can then send out a letter under the Debt Set-Off Program and say, hey, you were assessed this fee, you were sent a letter, you didn't respond, you didn't pay your fee. We are going to send this debt to the North Carolina Debt Set-Off Program if you don't pay it. What that does is the North Carolina Debt Set-Off Program is something that's only available to local government entities or other state entities, and they will take the fine out of your taxes or your lottery winnings if you hit the lottery. And I think there are a few other mechanisms that they have, but that's a pretty strong tool for collecting these fines if they're ignored.
What feedback are you getting? Or first of all, when you are levying fines, are they a variety of infractions, or?
No, it's usually so the first infraction is a warning, and I just send the letter. So it's usually the second, third, fourth, and I just never hear back from them. Or if I do hear from them, it's an excuse. It was my neighbor's trash, or it wasn't my trash, I wasn't home.
And is it usually involving just trash?
Mm-hmm.
What's it going to take, Brandon, for us to be a part of that program?
I think Savannah's already started the process.
Yes, you'll have a resolution next month at your council meeting.
Yay.
Yeah, the current situation, we'd actually have to go to court to try to collect it, which is fairly easy to do because it's a civil penalty. It's not, but it's still you gotta make it a really big bill for this person. You seek attorney's fees, and all of a sudden your little old lady has got something she can't ever pay. So this is great news.
Okay, Savannah, are we down to item 3 now? Or are we through?
Yes, I think so.
I've got one
Okay.
more question.
Let me, go ahead, Kitty.
Under number 9, convenience center use, you use the term residence, but when I think of a resident, I think of us. We live here full time, but I think it should be homeowners plus renters or whatever, because residence is restrictive.
Well, I think residence actually is more inclusive than property owner, because a resident, and we can define this, but that would extend to someone who is residing here temporarily in an Airbnb, VRBO, vacation home, something like that.
I think that needs to be clarified, because resident sounds like somebody that lives here full time, whether they own or they rent, they're here full time.
I think that's a good point. Oversight on my part. The chief of police pointed that out to me as well and reminded me that when we worked together at the county, I had explained that residency was physical presence with the permanent intent to remain. So we can clean that up. I've been taking notes, and the issue with the convenience center, when Buncombe County does its landfill enforcement, it focuses on the type of solid waste that goes into the landfill. So it would say that the landfill is only to be used for solid waste generated within Buncombe County. And I think we can explore whether that could work with the convenience center. Say the convenience center is for solid waste generated within the town of Montreat.
I think that's in. That's already in.
Okay. It's because I think you could imagine someone taking trash to the convenience center who's not a resident, maybe who's not a guest. And I'm not sure if that's something you want to capture, but if I did, some sort of work at someone, if I were doing a house cleaning service and I took the garbage away after I was done, would that be appropriate for the convenience center, even though I'm not a resident of the town? I think reasonable minds could disagree, but we want to know how the commissioners feel about that before we put it in the ordinance.
I want to suggest that we add a link on recycling to Kirby. So, because there's still a lot of confusion about what can be recycled and what cannot. And if we provide a link, people might go there.
Okay. I think it's not a bad idea to make some reference to Kirby and where they can learn what information is.
And you're still going to make it clear about the unbagged recyclables?
Yes,
I'm
yeah,
still
we'll
going to
clean
put
that
mine
up.
in a blue bag, right?
Yeah. We can clean that up. Okay, so let's shift gears to a related topic, but let's talk about bears. I guess it was last month, Commissioner Dasher, Commissioner Alexander, myself, Arrington Cox, and Barry all met with Ashley Hobbs of North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission. She has some recommendations for us that we would like to talk to you about. Commissioner Dasher is actually going to lead this conversation, and I'll jump in as needed, but I'll hand it over to you, Grant.
All right, so lots and lots of passion surrounding the topic of bears in Montreat, right? People love them. Some people hate them. People think they're cute and cuddly. Some people think they're destructive, right? One thing that almost nobody in Montreat is feeling concerning the bears is indifference. That was revealed is indifference. There's not a lot of indifference, concerning the bears, and that was revealed in Tom's survey that he put together. That was 2024, correct? Right, about a year ago. Montreaters are passionate about bears. So the 2024 survey that Tom put out had 442 responses. Almost 70% of respondents said that bears in Montreat are either a serious or a very serious issue. 30% of respondents reported having bears in their trash at some point. 13% reported bears breaking their trash receptacles. 81% said that they had bears in close proximity to their home, and 67% said that the town should require bear-proof containers, which Tom mentioned earlier. In the most recent police survey, wildlife encounters was listed as the #2 issue for quality of life in Montreat. So I just want to pause and just say, man, life in Montreat is really good, right? If that's our #2 issue, we're doing really, really well in Montreat.
They also said that wildlife encounters were the #2 public safety issue. Yeah, well. That's right. Both of those. That's right. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But obviously, an important issue in Montreat, and again, the fact that, like I said, I don't want to discount the fact that that's our #2 issue. We've got a great life here in Montreat, so we should be thankful for that. This is my official position, okay, as a town council member. I think bears are cute, okay? I think they're really cute. That's my official position. I wouldn't call them cuddly.
I wouldn't call them cuddly. Yeah, my 7-year-old daughter she wants to go and cuddle with the bears. I'm like, that's a bad idea. Don't go and try and cuddle with the bears. But I personally enjoy seeing bears in my yard or around town. I actually enjoy it. I like it. That being said, I don't want them in my trash, and I certainly don't want them in my house, where I eat and where I sleep and where I live. It's not good for me. It's not good for my family. And it's not good for the bear because the bear has to then be euthanized. So it's not good for anybody. We had, I believe, 3 instances of what I would call a bear B&E or breaking and entering, which I don't think Brandon would hold up in a court because I think some windows were open. Maybe that's not an actual breaking and entering if the window's open. Is that correct? Still, okay. Okay, we're getting into the weeds here.
But the fact that it's a bear really changes.
That's right. So you can't press charges against the bear. 4. So actually 4. And I'm joking here, but 4 bears in a house. Yes, it's not. That's a serious thing, and that was this summer.
That's been reported.
That's right. That's 4 bears in a home that's been reported. So needless to say, there is a recognition by the vast majority of people in Montreat that the relationship between humans and bears in our town, it's not headed in the right direction. I think almost all of us can agree on that. The population of bears, particularly in Buncombe County, it is exploding. Whereas bears in the wild, they'll have often 1 or 2 cubs. Bears in town can have as many as 5 cubs. And this is directly related to their year-round buffet of food that they've got and the rich fat content in all of our trash cans. So when bears eat a lot of fat, they have a lot of cubs. And if you've noticed, this past summer, you saw many mamas walking around with large numbers of cubs. And so the point is the population's exploding. And the problem is not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. It's going to get much worse. I just read an article this past week. There was someone who was killed by a black bear in Arkansas. And that's 2 people in Arkansas in 2 separate instances, I believe with 2 separate bears that have been killed by bears in Arkansas. Guess when the last time that happened? 1892 was the last time someone was killed by a bear in Arkansas. So what happened? Well, population growth, right? Bears are making a huge comeback in Arkansas. I lived in Arkansas for a decade, and I love it. I love what's happening with the reintroduction of bears and elk in Arkansas. They were there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I think it's great what the Wildlife Commission is doing, but as the population grows, these encounters where people are killed or severely injured by bears, they're going to increase. I've got a picture. I thought about bringing it. I've got it on my phone if anybody wants to see it. I thought it would be maybe inappropriate to show it because it's pretty gruesome. But it's a guy who was mauled by a bear over at Shope Creek, I think about 2 years ago. You guys may have seen that on the news. We have a lot of people, a lot of kids walking down the street in the summer. It is my opinion that as this bear population grows and as bears are less wild, it's only a matter of time before something like that happens in Montreat. Just my opinion. I'm a dentist, not a wildlife biologist, but it does seem like we're headed in that direction. I think there's a lesson to be learned here, and that's as populations of bears increase, I think humans, we're going to have to be more thoughtful about how we share space with animals like black bears. I've heard people say we're in their territory or we're in their environment. It's not really true. Like we're in each other's. We both live here, right? We're all living here. Humans have to live somewhere, right? And so we're in each other's environment, and so we're going to have to figure out a better way to kind of deal with that. I don't think any of us want to see dangerous or destructive interactions with bears in Montreat. And we do want bears to live in these mountains. If the bears didn't exist, I think that would be a sad day. However, and this is a big however, we should want the bears to be wild. And I think that's really where this discussion is centered, is wanting the bears to be wild. And wild means not depending upon humans for their sustenance and then also having a healthy fear of humans. So a few of us, Savannah mentioned, reached out to Ashley Hobbs from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. She's a bear biologist, the bear biologist for Buncombe County, which means that she's an expert on bears. And she's the one that actually has to come and euthanize the bears when they enter into someone's home or become aggressive. And we've had that happen how many times this past summer? Was it? Euthanization of bears twice this past summer.
Early March.
Yep. So early March. So we've had 2 bears that had to be euthanized after they either entered someone's home or became aggressive. And I just want to go over the points that Ashley made, concerning what the town can do that we're not currently doing. And then we can passionately discuss it, right? We're not all going to agree on all the things that she recommended, but this is what she said, and I do trust Ashley. I think she's, I know she's an expert on bears, and if she came to me for a tooth question, I hope that she would trust me. And I trust what she says, and I think she's got some good recommendations that we can discuss. The first is bear-proof cans, which we've kind of discussed, quite a bit here. I'm not going to go over that again. The second thing was a wildlife feeding ban. She said we could adopt or strengthen a local ordinance prohibiting intentional feeding of bears and other wildlife, which does happen. Saw a bunch of apples sitting down by the gate a few times, unless someone tripped and fell and dropped a bunch of apples and didn't have time to pick them up. I think that was probably intentional feeding of the bears. Clarify that leaving unsecured garbage, pet food, bird seed, or grease constitutes feeding. Got to clean your grill. Got to clean the grease trap out of your Blackstone. Supporting public education on the negative impacts of feeding. It habituates bears or conditions bears and increases conflict. And we've done some of that. Maybe some of that more that could be done. Consider a fine for noncompliance, and this is concerning the wildlife feeding ban. So we discussed fines, obviously, in terms of the trash ordinance, but this is more with the wildlife feeding ban.
Grant, can I just jump in here about the wildlife feeding ban really quickly? So I reached out to the town manager in Highlands, North Carolina. They've had some success dealing with their bear problems. So I just asked, his name is Josh Ward, and I just asked him a couple of questions. They did implement a wildlife feeding ban, and over the course of our conversation, Josh feels that that ban has been pretty successful. It's still in place to this day. And I'm just going to read to you what he said. Initially, a group of citizens created an advisory committee to meet and discuss the bear-human interactions the community was experiencing. The group used information from the state's Bearwise initiative. A main preventative measure was to prohibit the feeding of birds that attracts the bears. The board agreed and adopted the measure, which proved to help the dangerous interactions. Property owners did a good job in complying with the ordinance once word spread. Shortly after the committee's discussions, the town's bear to human interactions had gotten more and more frequent, so the town decided to begin with the replacement of our street cans with bear-resistant receptacles. The changes quickly stopped the nightly visit to the main street trash receptacles. Next, we purchased bear-resistant toters for the commercial customers, which we provided for 5 years. Now the commercial customers are responsible for replacement of their own toters. So, and then he goes on to talk more specifically about the cans, but they did see good success with the wildlife feeding ban.
Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of the second point we discussed was the wildlife feeding ban. The third was hazing and deterrence, and this is something that I think is not something that I, until I spoke with the wildlife biologist that is kind of over Ashley maybe a year ago or so, and he's over I think 11 counties in western North Carolina. He told me about deterrence and hazing, and it was not something that I had ever really heard of before. But Ashley said, we should be willing to support safe hazing practices to discourage bears from lingering in residential areas. So approved methods would include noise, like air horns, shouting, sometimes just good old yelling at the bear, sometimes that works. A lot of times what you've noticed is that this just doesn't work. Lights, like a bright light, that sometimes works, doesn't work other times. And then non-lethal deterrents like paintball markers. It doesn't hurt the bear. I played paintball with my wife, and she shot me with a paintball gun. Can you believe it? It doesn't hurt the bear, but it is a deterrent. But hazing the bears, and the point is that hazing's meant to reinforce a bear's natural fear of humans. That is the key. Bears, if we want bears to be bears, and we want humans to be able to live where bears live, the bears have to be wild, and a major component of that is that bears have to fear human beings in a good way. And the paintball gun's it's just not gonna hurt a bear. And then coordinating with North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission for guidance or training if needed. So like if someone has a question like what hazing a bear, I've never heard that. That sounds dangerous, or it sounds like it's a really bad idea. I think there could be some education as to what would be safe and what's prudent, what's reasonable, and what makes sense. Well, right now it's illegal. It's illegal to use a BB gun in Montreat.
It's illegal to use a pea shooter in Montreat.
Yeah. So
don't tell on yourself.
So this is yeah. So wait, I didn't hear you. What did you know? It's not a felony. You won't go to prison, but we should look at that. I mean, as an ordinance change. I mean, you don't want kids in the summer running around playing BB gun war, and so I'm sure there's an effective, creative way to use language that would prohibit those kinds of things, but allow for people to haze bears. And Brandon, I'm sure can.
I don't think we want kids running around with paintball.
I agree. We don't
really,
want either one of those things.
That's what you all need to discuss is what kind of hazing measures are you willing to take? What do we want to put in an ordinance perhaps? What kind of age restrictions would need to be on, if we do select, maybe we're going to allow folks to have paintball guns in town to use to haze the bears. What age restrictions do we put on it?
You have to be 25 to rent a car.
Yeah, no one under 21 can. So this all needs to be a discussion of what you want to see and how tight you want to make it.
It'd be the grad students in Montreat that are 25 running around with paintball guns. So I think we can come up with some language that would prohibit that, but allow for reasonable hazing of bears with a non-lethal method.
I think it ought to be connected with somebody's property. I don't think they
You
should
can't
be
go
running around
beyond
town
your
with
property.
paintball guns.
That's fair.
There's a public comment period in just a second, Arrington, and you can jump in all you want.
I'm almost done. I've just got a couple of more points. We can follow up. Yep. And then she also, under hazing and deterrence, she also advocated for changing our ordinance on dogs, and even brought up the idea of allowing dogs to be run through town every so often as a deterrent. I know that's controversial. I don't know if I know that the main problem we had with dogs being run in town, bear dogs, was with a guy who was not part of the bear club. Is that correct? So there could maybe part of this ordinance is if you are a member of a bear club, which we know there's only one bear club here. There's some sort of you could purchase some sort of ability to have your dogs, if they came in town, they come and get them out quickly, but we don't find those people. She said that having those dogs close to town and the hunting closer to town, what it did was the problem bears are the bears that are the most bold, and the bears that are the most bold oftentimes are the bears that are being harvested by the bear club. And so it doesn't do a lot necessarily. It's not like we're never going to see bears in Montreat, but what hunting closer to town did was they were able to harvest some of those bolder bears. I know that the Bear Club no longer hunts close to Montreat. They've backed out of because they don't want to be fined. So
They've moved their hunting territory to drive the bears
your mic.
away from Montreat rather than toward Montreat.
Say that again into the mic.
They've changed their hunting habits. They no longer bait the bears where they come toward Montreat, where they're driven by their dogs. They bait the bears and then they approach them to drive them away from Montreat. And that's from the president of the Bear Club. And the only way they shoot bears is when they're treed. They don't chase bears. They chase them till the tree, and then that's when they shoot them, is in the tree. So they don't chase them on the run.
In fact, if you shoot a bear that's not in a tree in that club, they kick you out of the club.
Because the bullet, you don't know where the bullet's going to go. But if you shoot it up and shoot the bear.
And I just want to throw in here, I don't think anyone is advocating for shooting bears
That's
in
right.
town limits
I
by
think-
hunters or otherwise.
Right.
I just wanted to
But-
make that really clear, that that's not what we're saying.
Yeah, and I've talked with Ashley some, and you know, we responded as I really thought was appropriate under the circumstances we faced, but there are ways you can control, not just simply a blanket, yeah, you can run your dogs in Montreat, but during certain times of the year, but it has to be controlled, and we've got to keep them away from the children, because if the bears are dangerous enough, you put the bears and the dogs chasing the bears. And let me assure you, those that you don't know, dogs and bears are genetically enemies, okay? It's imprinted, it's in there. They hate each other from sight, from birth. And you put dogs and bears and children in one space, and you've got a very, very dangerous situation, and the town can't be. But if you can take limited areas of town at appropriate, times of the year, let the residents know that there might be bears there, you could again harass the bears. That's the whole point of it, is harassing the bears to keep them wild.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to run dogs on July 3rd,
Or Thanksgiving.
You could do something in January, February, in limited parts of town. Everybody knows they're coming, and devise a safe system.
Yeah, and I'll say too, in general, like the bear clubs, I think that would be a good symbiotic relationship. We already have a good relationship with them in terms of they allow us to use the trail, their land. I mean, it's a good relationship that I think could be fostered. I wasn't on the council whenever we had a bad actor in town who was, it seemed like, and maybe intentionally running dogs through town.
He was.
Yeah. This is separate from that, so I don't know if there needs to be, I think there needs to be a lot of communication on the front end, making sure that people understand this isn't that. Anyway, these are all things I guess we can discuss. But
I think the mayor is correct. That one of the results of that ordinance was, instead of baiting the bears right on our borders, which is what was happening, they moved that bait away to move the bears away from the town boundaries. So I don't think the ordinance itself has resulted in more bears, but rather less bears being attracted by them to the town.
But I think our ordinance also let the bears know this is a safe haven because there are no dogs in here. But I think if we advertised we're going to have a dog running day, keep your kids and your dogs inside, and advertise it way ahead of time, that running the dogs through here, I don't know how often, asked Ashley how often we'd have to do that to
She
make
recommended
a
at
move.
least twice a year that would need to happen, preferably more, but that would be the kind of absolute minimum.
I'm not even sure the Bear Club would want to do that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think there's
I mean,
any
it may be a moot
interest.
point. They may not want to do it. But I think at least making it where they are not penalized, if there's a way to create some sort of system, I don't know. Legally, I guess that's a question for Brandon. But these are just things that she advocated for. We can figure out the best way to move forward with it. But I want to I'll just finish with the last thing was public education. And it,
Before you leave that point.
Go ahead, yeah.
If we are in agreement with some type of controlled situation with running dogs, it might really be good to sit with the president of the Bear Club and a couple of their members,
Yep.
just to work through what they think would be good, because they know the bear habits. Ashley does too, of course, but
Yep.
But they would know the bear habits around here and when it might be good to do it.
Yep.
I agree with that, but I would recommend that if Savannah, if you're in with that group, which I do recommend talking to the bear people, that we also include the chief of the police department and probably Barry.
Yes, it would be that would be a multifaceted conversation, I think, with council, staff, and the Bear Club. But once Grant gets through his last point, let's go back and talk about what types of hazing you all might be interested in seeing, and then we would need to bring that back to you. But we need to get something in place before summer rolls back around. So I'll let Grant finish, and then we'll talk about that.
The last one is one that I think we're already doing, which is public education and outreach. And I do think we're going to have to lean into some. If we add some of these components, obviously there needs to be a lot of education around what it means, why it's being done, and so that's a discussion that we need to have as well. How do we communicate this to the public? But continue to partner with North Carolina Wildlife. Ashley's a great resource. I think getting her more involved and not less involved is great. And then partnering with local organizations to share bear-wise materials. Arrington is doing a great job, and we're working on a better line of communication between Bear-Wise and the police right now. A way that we will be able to document all of these encounters and make sure we have one source of documentation in terms of all of the bear encounters in town. But just being able to share Bear-Wise materials with the community, Arrington will be a big part of that. And then promoting bearwise.org and North Carolina Wildlife's hotline for reporting aggressive or food conditioned bears. And I do want to mention this. Ashley did say that she was, I mean, if we don't do something, we're no longer going to be a Bear-Wise community. And that Arrington, we can talk about that. But I think there's some things that obviously we can and should do, and if we don't do, the problem's not going to. It's not that it's not going to go away. It's going to get worse. They're having a lot of cubs, so that's all I've got. Sorry, I spoke a very long time.
No, that was good. Thanks, Grant. And I think what I need from you all is some direction on if allowing some more, if allowing hazing of the bears is something that you're interested in seeing, maybe what types of hazing you'd be interested in allowing in town, and then letting us bring something back to you for consideration. I think if we need to get a handle on this before folks start rolling in for the summer.
First of all, I think that the hazing needs to be age restricted to adults, and I don't know if adult is 21. I've seen some 21-year-olds that act like 18 or 16-year-olds or 12-year-olds at times, so I don't know if it's 21, 25, but it needs to be age restricted. Personally, I'd like to see the use of a BB gun. I mean, I pop the bear in the rear end and the bear's gone. It's like a bee sting, and they go. Barry had me using a slingshot, and Barry, I found out I wasn't very good with slingshot and marbles. I just can't hit anything.
So Ashley said a BB gun's fine. It's these high-powered pellet guns and so she said it can be hard to distinguish between a BB gun and a high-powered pellet gun. Again, maybe that's maybe Brandon can help us with the language there. If there's a way to enforce that, I don't know.
You can say BBs, not pellets.
That's right, because a lot of BB guns allow BBs or pellets.
Or pellets, you can, yeah.
One thing I think we should do is look at other jurisdictions and see if any other jurisdictions are using air pistols, air rifles, BB guns, things like that. I'm having we've got the Christmas season coming up, and this is just making me think of the one movie. So, you know.
But I do think that if we're considering BB guns, we also ought to consider paintball guns, because I will tell you from
And if we don't have
personal
good,
experience, it works.
if we don't have good aim, it's going to be a colorful community.
And if your if your CO2 cartridge is not full, it doesn't work. My situation, if I can take a minute, there was a bear on my deck, and I got my paintball gun, and I went out, and I hadn't used it in a long time. I shot the paintball gun, and the paintball went like this. And I thought, well, maybe it needs to be primed, so I took another shot, and it went like this. And I said to the bear, stay there. Went and got a new cartridge, came back out, hit him with a paintball, and he ran.
So one thing that we could consider would be allowing a provision to have staff use, you know, maybe something like a BB gun. And we, like Brandon said, we would need to look into what other jurisdictions are doing. And then allowing the general public to use maybe something like a paintball gun, maybe non-exploding, so that we don't, you know, just paint the town neon pink. But, and then restrict that use to their own property limits, yeah.
Loud noises, the lights, the bright lights, whatever.
Yeah, sound, we need horns, lights.
Air horns, for sure. Because the Public Works and Police Department staff encounter bears, you know, on a daily basis. And I think that, I don't know that I want to give the blanket approval for BB guns all throughout town, but I would trust Barry with a BB gun and a bear. So you know, something like that might be effective, but still a little bit more reined in.
These guns that shoot pepper balls, she said those were the best. And so maybe we get a couple of those for the guys in town.
Yeah, I think the police department may already have pepper ball guns.
We have OC spray, we don't have ball.
Okay, so we can look into maybe allowing a little bit more for town staff and then dialing it back for folks who live in town, but we can workshop that.
Yeah.
And that should be for both Public Works and police.
Yes.
Now, air horns do work, too, and they don't shoot anything but noise.
Also, I think we ought to be no feeding wildlife community here.
I agree.
That's
that-
really the hard conversation.
We already are a non-wildlife feeding community, but, I mean, our ordinance already bans everything except for birds. All we have to do is literally remove a parenthetical except for birds, bird feeders, just about. I mean, sure, we can beef it up some, but it's already there. It's just, we make an exception for bird feeders, but the exception swallows the rule.
My recommendation would be to do a blanket wildlife feeding ban, including birds and bird feed, for 1 year. And let's just see how it goes. I know that folks are attached to their bird feeders and watching the birds. I also enjoy having bird feeders. But we had a bad summer, and it's not safe for the bears, and it's not safe for the folks who live in town. And I think that if we can just see how it goes and then have another discussion maybe this time next year.
I would like it to be more than 1 year, 2 years. I can tell you from my own experience, we just decided no more bird feeders. And we literally rarely ever see any bears anymore. We are lucky to see one a year go through our yard, when before it was once every couple of weeks. And we were bringing the feeder in. But when it's just gone, when the food's no longer there, they quit looking.
I'm like Mason. I stopped feeding birds, hummingbirds and regular bird feeder, and I don't even put my trash in my trash can, my garbage. I can put some recycle, but I don't put it in until the day of pickup, because I found that if I put it in Wednesday to Thursday, something like that, they're going to go up there and they're going to rock my garbage can, and eventually they're going to probably get it up. So I just don't give them that opportunity.
I'm referring back to the bear survey. And although there was a 67% response of residents saying that they wanted to require bear-proof or bear-resistant containers. Less than 50% wanted to require no feeding of birds. I would be for a ban for a period of time, not more than a year, because I think the folks who feed birds, myself included, that's part of the joy of being here, for one. But secondly, I know when I can and can't feed birds. I don't feed birds from about March until December. And then I feed for 3 months. And I think that let's see how some of these other things go before we remove a parenthetical statement about except birds. That's a personal opinion and reflecting the majority of people in town.
Can I say, we feed bears at our office, and bears. We don't feed bears, sorry. It's on my mind. We feed birds. And my window of my office is probably 25 feet off the ground. We have we open up the door or the window and reach out with a hook and grab the feeder, fill it, and hang it back up. We don't have any problems with bears, and we have waste-free feeders. I don't know if that's something that we want to include. Like if you keep it up off the ground, I've never in 6 years seen a bear either below the feeder or clearly they're not going to get to the feeder because it's pretty high up off the ground.
I think that there is, my recommendation would be, and you all are the ones who have to make the decision, but my recommendation would be, let's try a blanket ban for 1 year, and then let's scale it. But let's get a handle on the problem, and then let's scale it back. Let's say bird feeders, so many feet off the ground from this month to this month, and it has to be a waste-free feeder. But I think let's try really getting a handle on our problem this year. Let's really make an effort in 2026 to get bears and trash under control. And then after, I know that we will have success from implementing the bear-resistant containers, the fees, the wildlife ban. I know that we'll see some improvement. And then let's, take our foot off the gas a little bit and allow some things back in. I think that's probably the most effective way to tackle this problem. And again, you all are the ones who have to make the decision. That's just my recommendation.
I used the same defense because I have a bird feeder that was accessed by the second-story window. But I spent a long time on the phone with Jeff, who convinced me to take it down because he said it was the smell that was attracting, because any seeds that fall on the ground, the squirrels or the birds pick it up, and there's no scratching by the bears. But I took it down. I can't say that I haven't seen any bears because I still am on their route, but I'm willing to try it for a year.
I agree. Let's go with Savannah's recommendation. I would like to see that for a year, and then we'll be better informed as to what to do in the future.
And I'll bring it back to you. You'll see some language and be able to make some changes if you'd like. But we'll work on some hazing measures. We'll work on a wildlife feeding ban for a year. And we'll bring that back to you. And if we're ready to move on to public comment, I think that's all I had on bears. I know it's sad. I'm sorry.
All right.
We'll figure out new ways to bird watch, the way people really, bird watchers watch.
Floor is open for public comment. Short, 3 minutes at most. Well, if you're getting up to make public comment, Barrington, you.
I never speak more than 3 minutes. I know that rule. I just wanted to speak as part of the committee that met with Savannah and Grant. Ashley was very, very firm on this moratorium for a year on the bird feeding. She was really adamant about that. She was also adamant about the trash issue, these trash cans, securing somehow these trash cans. The other thing that she brought up that I thought was interesting was hazing. which you all have not mentioned, which I thought was a great idea, was if you see these bears wandering down the street and you in your car just drive up behind them and blow your horn, make them uncomfortable, make it miserable for them to be here. That's what was, let's see, that was what, 30 seconds?
Thank you. Yes, Ashley did mention if you see a bear in the street, that is another effective way of hazing, is to drive up very slowly behind them and beep your horn.
But then they run away and you don't get to look at them.
Yeah.
That's you know.
Yeah, you can't get your phone out and do your pictures and videos.
You can't post it on Instagram. Yeah.
Any other public comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn by the commissioners.
May I just say one thing that I found?
Absolutely.
So I just found something from California California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and it's a guide to black bear hazing specifically. Notably, they focus on making noises, and I'll share it. They don't talk about using any external measures other than an air horn. I'm wondering, in the spirit of the 1 year of stopping with bear feeding, if we start by showing these hazing measures with this noise first. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to police whatever anyone's doing on their property that works, so long as it's consistent with laws and all those things. But as far as a public-facing policy, if we start with the noise thing, this seems, there's a lot of good stuff in here. Make loud noises, examples: yell, clap, bang pots and pans, deploy air horn or car horn, inflate, shake, and empty trash bag, open or close an umbrella, show dominance by holding your ground at a safe distance, looking the bear in the eyes, raise your arms above your head to look larger. Never leave your safe location. Now, before you get here, it has a whole half a page on evaluating whether this is a good bear to haze. And then it has some after steps of what to do after you haze the bear. It looks like mainly do a yard audit and see what was it in your yard that attracted the bear in the first place. So I would suggest starting with a light touch before we start arming everybody.
I agree.
Savannah, you going to come back to us with recommendations? Anyone else for public comment? Entertain a motion to adjourn. So a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Fouché. Second.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Alexander. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. We stand adjourned. And thank you all for coming.
James.